should I say I like to shop or I like shopping? The short answer is that both of these are grammatically correct, and often it doesn't matter which one you use. However, there is a very small difference between them. If you look in a grammar textbook, you will see that I like to shop is the better choice when we want to say that something is a habit or a preference. It's something that we choose to do or something that we do often. And I like shopping is the better choice when we want to focus more on the fact that we enjoy this activity. Although this is true, it's a very small difference, and not all native English speakers use them this way all the time. As an English learner, this is something that you should know about, but it's not something that I want you to worry about too much, because again, often it really doesn't matter which one you use. But this brings us to a very important topic, which is gerunds and infinitives. A gerund is when we use the ing form of a verb as the subject or object of a sentence. For example, I like shopping. There, I is the subject, like is the main verb, and shopping is the object. Or, shopping is fun. There, shopping is the subject that is described by the adjective fun. And an infinitive is just the base form of the verb, with the word to before it. For example, to swim or to study. Like is an example of a verb that can be followed by either a gerund or an infinitive. We can say I like shopping or I like to shop. Again, both are correct and they mean basically the same thing. But some verbs can only be followed by an infinitive, and some verbs can only be followed by a gerund. Avoid is an example of a verb that can only be followed by a gerund. We can't say I avoid to eat fast food. It has to be I avoid eating fast food. And decide is an example of a verb that can only be followed by an infinitive. You can't say I decided studying English. It has to be I decided to study English. And there are also some verbs that can be followed by either a gerund or an infinitive, but the meaning is different depending on which one you use. A good example is the verb stop. When we use stop with a gerund, it means that you stop that activity. I stopped talking means that I was talking, but then I stopped and I was quiet. But when we use stop with an infinitive, this means that we stop a different activity because we want to do this activity. For example, I was driving and I stopped to use the toilet. This means that I stopped driving because I needed to use the toilet. And the final thing that we need to talk about is how do we know whether we need a gerund or an infinitive after a verb? And my basic answer is the same as my basic answer always is. Listen to English every day. Read every day. Practice speaking and practice writing every day. Yes, there are some rules that can help you to understand why we sometimes use gerunds and why we sometimes use infinitives, but rules never work 100% of the time, and I really don't recommend learning this that way. I recommend just paying attention to the things that you see and hear. When you notice something interesting, write it down and practice using it. And don't think about this as I want to understand gerunds and infinitives. Instead, focus on each individual verb that you learn. When you learn a new verb, look for some example sentences with it and pay attention to whether those use gerunds or infinitives, and then practice using it until it becomes automatic and you don't have to ask yourself whether that verb requires a gerund or an infinitive. And if you really want to, you can just search online. There are plenty of lists available that will show you verbs that use gerunds and verbs that use infinitives. But again, you will still have to listen to, read, and practice using them every day if you want to remember them. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.